The auctioneer's
How's
voice
that
cut
for
out
art?
mid-sentence.
What the hell?
Not a technical
Hey,
glitch.
calm down. It was just
Not
a joke.
power surge.
You had it coming.
The
You're both
microphone was
insane. This is
live.
assault. Let's
The
just
silence
talk.
came from him. A man in a gray linen jacket standing near the back wall of the Hargrove Gallery. Phone pressed to his ear, saying 2 words to someone on the other end. 2 words. That was all it took. By the time Sylvia Crane pushed through the crowd to reach the podium, the screens behind the stage had already gone dark. Lot 47, the centerpiece of the entire evening, a Basquiat acquisition valued at $4.2 million, had been removed from the auction roster. Not postponed, removed. What happened? Sylvia grabbed the auctioneer's sleeve, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The auctioneer looked at her, the way people look at someone who doesn't yet understand that the ground has already shifted beneath their feet. The owner withdrew consent, he said simply. Effective immediately. Sylvia's eyes swept the room. 200 guests, cameras rolling. And somewhere near the back, a man in a gray linen jacket was already moving toward the exit. Unhurried, quiet, carrying nothing but the particular stillness of someone who had been waiting all night for exactly this moment. 3 hours earlier. The cab dropped Marcus Hale 2 blocks from the Hargrove Gallery because traffic on West 57th had locked solid at 7:15, and Marcus didn't mind walking. He liked arriving to things on foot. You saw more. You noticed who was nervous, who was performing, who had already decided how the evening would end before it began. Tonight, the gallery's facade glowed amber under a row of recessed lights installed specifically for the event. Warm enough to suggest intimacy, bright enough to ensure the photographers outside got clean shots of every face coming through the door. A burgundy awning stretched from the entrance to the curb. 2 doormen in black stood beneath it, and behind them, through the floor-to-ceiling glass, Manhattan's art world had assembled in its full theater. Marcus paused at the corner and looked at it. Gray linen jacket, dark trousers, pressed clean. A watch his grandfather had worn, steel-cased, no logo anyone at this party would recognize. He'd dressed like himself tonight, which meant he'd dressed like someone nobody inside would bother placing. That was the plan. It had always been the plan. He crossed the street at a measured pace. A woman ahead of him, white dress, enormous diamond on her left hand, stepped through the door without breaking her conversation. The doorman smiled and held it. Marcus followed 3 steps behind her, and the doorman's hand moved. Not blocking, just pausing. The kind of pause that asked a question without using words. "Sir," the doorman's eyes moved across Marcus from shoulder to shoulder. "Delivery access is through the loading bay on 56th. You'll want to check in with—" "I'm a guest," Marcus said. His voice was level, not irritated, just accurate. The doorman's expression didn't shift much, but something behind it recalibrated. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and produced a white card, heavy stock, black lettering, a small embossed seal in the lower corner. The doorman looked at it, looked at Marcus, looked at the card again. "Of course," he stepped back. "Enjoy your evening." Marcus pocketed the card and walked in. The interior of the Hargrove Gallery had been transformed for the event. Track lighting angled precisely at the 49 lots displayed along the walls. Oils, photography, a bronze sculpture near the north end that Marcus had spent 3 months negotiating to acquire. White tablecloths on cocktail rounds, champagne flutes catching light. A string quartet stationed near the east wall, playing something from Ravel that most of the guests were talking over. He moved through the room slowly, hands loose at his sides, reading faces the way he always read rooms. Who was buying? Who was performing the act of buying? Who was here for the champagne? And who was nervous because something tonight depended on an outcome they couldn't control. He spotted Nadia almost immediately. She was 24, maybe 25, stationed near Lot 12. A large-format photograph he'd acquired from a Lagos-based artist 2 years ago. She had a gallery name tag clipped to her blazer and a small tablet in her hand, and she was explaining the work to a couple who weren't really listening, because the man kept glancing at his phone, and the woman kept glancing at the sculpture across the room. Nadia kept talking anyway, precise and careful, because she was the kind of person who believed the work deserved to be described accurately, regardless of who was listening. Marcus watched her for a moment. He'd noticed her name in the gallery's staff directory 3 weeks ago, when he'd been reviewing the event documentation. Nadia Osi, Junior Curatorial Assistant. Hired 8 months ago. He didn't know her, but he'd noted how she'd written up the catalog descriptions for his pieces. Thorough, specific, not a single approximation where a precise term was available. That mattered to him. He turned away before she could notice him watching. The room had filled to about 160 guests by the time Marcus completed his first slow circuit. He recognized maybe a dozen faces. Collectors he'd dealt with, a museum director from Chicago, a critic who'd written about his foundation's acquisitions twice in the last year. None of them recognized him. This was not unusual. Marcus Hale did not have a publicist. He did not attend industry events. The photographs that existed of him were years old and had never been widely circulated, because he had never been interested in being widely circulated. He found a position near a marble column on the room's east side and settled there, champagne glass untouched on the high top beside him, watching the lot arrangement. 49 works on display. Lot 47 was the centerpiece, the Basquiat. It hung at the far end of the room's main gallery, separated from the other works by a few feet of empty wall on either side. Soft, uplighting. A small velvet rope. A printed description card that understated its significance by about 400%. Marcus had paid $2.1 million for it at a Sotheby's sale in 2019. Its current estimated value was $4.2, based on comparable market activity. He had loaned it to the Hargrove 6 weeks ago with a specific written agreement, one he had not yet decided whether to enforce. He was still deciding. That was when he heard the heels. Sylvia Crane moved through a room the way weather systems move through corridors. You felt her before you saw her, in the way other people shifted and opened space without quite realizing they were doing it. She was in her mid-50s, silver hair swept back, a dress the precise color of old money. She ran the Hargrove Gallery the way a conductor runs an orchestra. Total authority, total control, and an absolute conviction that every instrument existed to serve her reading of the score. She was coming from the direction of the private office, and she had Derek 2 paces behind her, which was his usual position at these events. Derek Crane was her husband, her largest private donor, and the man whose name appeared on the Hargrove's donor wall in letters 3 inches tall. He wore confidence the way some men wear cologne, applied too heavily, noticed from across the room. Marcus watched them work their circuit. They moved well together, Sylvia and Derek. She introduced, he validated, they moved on. It was practiced. It was effective. He'd seen a version of this routine at every major gallery event in New York for the past decade. They hadn't reached his side of the room yet. He turned back to Lot 12 and watched Nadia finish her explanation to the couple. The man had finally put his phone away. The woman was now actually looking at the photograph. Something Nadia had said, Marcus hadn't caught it, had redirected their attention. He watched the woman lean forward slightly, tilting her head, seeing the work differently than she had 30 seconds ago. Nadia noticed Marcus watching. She gave him a small professional nod. The nod you give a guest you haven't formally greeted yet. Marcus nodded back. Something about her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. A quick recalibration, like she was trying to sort him into a category and finding the obvious categories weren't quite fitting. She looked back at her tablet. The couple drifted toward the next lot. Marcus turned. Sylvia and Derek had changed direction. They were crossing the room toward him now. Not toward him specifically, he understood, but toward the column where he was standing, which happened to be adjacent to Lot 45, a piece that Derek had apparently expressed interest in purchasing before the auction. He watched them approach. Sylvia spotted him when she was about 15 feet away. Her stride didn't break, but her eyes did the same thing the doorman's had done. A quick horizontal read, shoulder to shoulder, processing what they saw. Marcus in his gray linen jacket, the untouched champagne. The position near the column that wasn't quite the position a paying guest would choose, but wasn't quite the position of a working staff member either. She smiled. It was the kind of smile people use when they've decided something and are now being polite about it. "Are you with the installation team?" she asked. Warm, helpful, absolutely certain. "No," Marcus said. "I'm not." A small pause. The smile held. "Catering, then. The service corridor is just through that door. If you've been turned around, it happens. The layout is a bit confusing tonight." "I'm a guest," Marcus said. Same tone, same level delivery. No heat in it, because heat would have given her something to push against. Sylvia's smile didn't falter, but her eyes moved once, quickly, to Derek. Derek made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "A guest." Derek's eyes traveled down Marcus's jacket and back up. "Right. The foundation table is over by the west wall. That's usually where the community partnership seats are. From the outreach program. The community partnership seats." Marcus filed that phrase carefully away. He looked at Derek for a moment, then back at Sylvia. "I'll find my way," he said simply, and turned back toward Lot 12. He heard Derek say something low to Sylvia as they moved on. He didn't turn around. There was no point in turning around. He stood at Lot 12 for another 90 seconds, looking at the Lagos photograph. A woman standing in a market, her back to the camera, surrounded by color that the photographer had captured with a patience and a precision that still moved Marcus when he looked at it. He'd bought it because of exactly that quality. The patience in it. He breathed once, slow. Then he took out his phone and sent a 2-word text to a number he'd been holding in reserve all evening. "Stand by." The auction was scheduled to begin at 8:30. By 8, the room had swelled to its full capacity. Just over 200 guests packed into a space that felt intimate at 150 and theatrical at 200. The string quartet had been replaced by recorded ambient music that no one had chosen to replace it with. Just a default that kicked in when their set ended, and no one had turned it off because everyone was too deep in their own conversations. Marcus had moved twice since Sylvia and Derek left him by the column. He was now positioned near the north end of the room, close to the bronze sculpture, which gave him a sight line across the full length of the gallery. From here he could see Lot 47 at the far end. The Basquiat, still lit, still waiting, and he could see the podium, and he could see the door to the private office where Sylvia had disappeared 20 minutes ago to make calls. He could also see Nadia. She was alone at a service station near the wall, updating something on her tablet, and she had the particular quality of stillness that people have when they're aware something in the room is slightly off, but can't identify what. She'd glanced at Marcus 3 times in the last half hour. Not in a hostile way, in the way people glance at something that doesn't parse cleanly. Marcus decided this about Nadia. She was the kind of person who noticed things and then took the noticing seriously. That was rarer than people thought. The doors to the private office opened, and Sylvia came back out with two men Marcus recognized. Hargrove board members, both of them, one of whom had been on the board for 11 years, and the other for 6. They were talking low and fast, the way people talk when a number has come in above expectations. The gala had already raised $1.4 million in direct donations before the auction even started, according to the brief the gallery had sent Marcus 3 weeks ago. They were projecting the auction itself to push the total to $8 million. Lot 47 was supposed to carry most of that weight. Derek intercepted Sylvia near the podium. He put a hand on her elbow, proprietary, comfortable, and leaned in to say something that made her laugh. The laugh was the real one, Marcus noticed, different from the smile she'd used with him. Her guard came down slightly when Derek was close, which told him something about their dynamic that he already suspected. He looked away. A man materialized at Marcus's right shoulder. Heavy build, dinner jacket, the look of someone who'd had 2 drinks too many, and was now interested in conversation. Fantastic piece. The Poussin. He nodded toward the sculpture. Not getting much attention tonight, which is either a shame or an opportunity, depending on your position. It's a Poussin Miller, Marcus said. The attribution is contested, but the evidence points that way. The man blinked. You follow the sculptor? I follow the market, Marcus paused, and I like the work. The man introduced himself, some name Marcus didn't retain, and launched into a monologue about his collection, which apparently lived in his 3rd home in Scottsdale. Marcus listened with one ear and watched the room with both eyes. Across the space, Derek had moved away from Sylvia and was now approaching the far corner, where a younger woman in a red dress was looking at Lot 43, a large oil that Marcus had flagged in the catalog as technically undervalued by about 20%. The man in the dinner jacket was still talking. Marcus nodded at intervals. Then he saw it. A server passed Derek with a tray of champagne flutes. Derek took one, looked toward the sculpture, and his eyes crossed the space and landed on Marcus. Something shifted in Derek's expression. Recognition, but not the right kind. The kind that says, I know what you are, not who. Derek handed his glass off to a passing guest who hadn't asked for it and started toward Marcus. Marcus turned to the man in the dinner jacket. Excuse me. He stepped away from the column, not to avoid Derek. There was no avoiding Derek in a room this size, but because he wanted the meeting to happen in open space, with people around, not tucked in a corner. He moved toward the center of the room, near a cocktail round where 3 women were debating the merits of Lot 31, and stopped there. Unhurried. Derek reached him in 30 seconds. He had a server with him. The server hadn't chosen to accompany him exactly, but had been redirected with a look and a gesture, and was now standing slightly to Derek's left, holding a tray, uncertain why. I want to make something clear, Derek said, not as an opening, as a correction to something that should already have been understood. The event tonight is by invitation only. Yes, Marcus said. Your name is... Derek glanced at the server, who had nothing to offer. Someone clearly made a mistake somewhere in the ticketing. Someone did, Marcus said, and the specific weight of that agreement made Derek pause for half a second. I think it would be best, Derek said, recovering, if you spoke with our events coordinator. She can sort out a donation arrangement through the foundation program. We have a very good... Derek. Sylvia appeared from his left, her hand finding his arm smoothly, a practiced interception. She'd seen the conversation from across the room and come to manage it. Her eyes went to Marcus once, brief and cool. Is there a problem? Our friend here seems to have found his way in through an incorrect ticket, Derek said. Sylvia's expression shifted into the particular setting she reserved for situations that needed to be resolved quietly and quickly, which was the setting she wore most of the time. She looked at Marcus with the professional warmth of a woman who had spent 30 years managing difficult situations by making them feel like they weren't situations at all. "I appreciate you joining us this evening," she said. Her voice was exactly the right temperature. "However, I do need to confirm your registration before the auction begins. It's just a formality. We want to make sure you're at the right table and—" "I don't have a table," Marcus said. "I don't need one." The warmth in Sylvia's expression cooled by precisely 1 degree. "I'm sorry?" "I'm here for lot 47, he said. "That's all." Something moved across Sylvia's face. A flicker of calculation, quick and sharp. Lot 47 was the Basquiat. The Basquiat was the centerpiece of the entire evening. Guests who arrived specifically for Lot 47 were not catering staff who had wandered in through a misdirected door, but the calculation lasted only a second, because the other thing, the thing she'd already decided when she saw him standing by the column, was stronger than the calculation. It was a reflex. The kind people don't know they have until they've already acted on it. "Sir." Her voice dropped in a way that wasn't rude, but was definitive. "The pieces on display tonight belong to private collectors who have entrusted them to this institution. I'm not in a position to allow anyone on the floor whose credentials aren't confirmed." "Lot 47, Marcus said carefully, "belongs to the Hale collection." The name meant nothing to Sylvia. He could tell because her expression didn't change. He watched that land, felt the small weight of what it meant, that in 30 years of running one of New York's most prominent galleries, she had processed the paperwork on his loan agreement, had signed the documentation, had displayed the piece under the terms he'd set, and had never once looked up the name attached to it carefully enough to know who she was dealing with. He said nothing else. Sylvia made a decision. "Derek, would you mind calling security, just to confirm the guest list?" Derek was already reaching for his phone, and that was the moment Nadia moved. She'd been 6 feet away, Marcus had clocked her without acknowledging it, and she'd been standing very still in the way people stand when they're deciding whether to speak. She stepped forward now, tablet in hand, and her voice was level, but her jaw was set in a way that told Marcus she understood exactly what she was walking into. "Mrs. Crane," Nadia said, "I just pulled up the confirmed guest registry." She turned the tablet slightly, not toward Derek, not toward Sylvia, just angled so the information was visible without being performed. "Marcus Hale, confirmed invitation. Owner of record on loan agreement. Hargrove Gallery. Lots 46, 47, and 48. 3 lots. Not one." Sylvia's eyes went to the tablet, went to Nadia, went to Marcus. The silence that followed lasted about 4 seconds, which is a long time in a room full of 200 people having other conversations. "I see," Sylvia said. Her voice was exactly even. "Thank you," Marcus said to Nadia. Not loudly, not for the room, just between them. Nadia gave him the same professional nod she'd given him an hour ago. But something in her eyes was different now, sharper and a little careful. The way a person looks when they've just understood something significant and are still working out what it means. Derek's phone was back in his pocket. His expression had gone through several adjustments and landed on a smile that didn't reach anything above his chin. "Well," he said, expansively, like he could fold the moment back into the evening's natural fabric. "That's, of course. Marcus, delighted to have you." Marcus looked at him. "I'm sure," he said. He turned and walked back toward the north wall. 3 guests near the cocktail round had been listening. Marcus could tell from the way they re-angled their conversations the instant he moved away. not away from the topic, but back to it, in lower voices. He caught one phrase from the woman in the black dress as he passed. "Didn't even recognize him," in front of everyone. He kept walking. At the north wall, near the bronze, he took out his phone and looked at the screen. No new messages. He put it back in his pocket. He had exactly 94 minutes before the auction began. He was still deciding. He looked at Lot 47, the Basquiat, lit and waiting at the end of the gallery. He thought about what Sylvia's face had done when she heard the words "Hail Collection" and felt nothing. Not guilt, just calculation. Even now, she was probably recalibrating, figuring out how to manage him, how to smooth this over, how to get through the auction without him creating a problem. She hadn't once considered that she might have already created one. That was the thing about decisions made from reflex. By the time you understood what they'd cost, the cost was already posted. Marcus breathed. He thought about the Lagos photograph on Lot 12, and the precision in the way Nadia had described it to the couple who weren't listening. He thought about his grandfather's watch. He thought about the specific quality of silence that fills a room when something irreversible has just been set in motion. Then he looked at his phone again. Stand by was still the last message sent. He didn't send another one, not yet, but he kept the phone in his hand. The auction started at 8:32, 2 minutes late, because the auctioneer, a man named Callum who had run these events for the Hargrove for 6 consecutive years, was waiting for a bid confirmation from a phone buyer in Zurich that came through at 8:31 and 40 seconds. Nobody in the room knew this except Callum and Sylvia had spent the final 2 minutes before the gavel sounded moving through the room with the specific grace of a woman who knows exactly how much is riding on the next 90 minutes and has decided to wear that knowledge lightly. She'd stopped near Marcus once, briefly. She hadn't said anything. She'd looked at him with the expression of someone who has decided to treat an earlier misunderstanding as a misunderstanding and nothing more, and then moved on. Marcus had watched her go. He was now standing at the edge of the room's eastern side, between Lot 19 and Lot 20, with a direct sight line to the podium. Around him, guests had redistributed themselves, some seated at the tablecloths, most standing in loose clusters, all facing the stage with the particular attention people give to things that involve large amounts of money-changing hands. Nadia was near the back. She'd been given a different station for the auction itself. She was positioned near the main entrance, managing the digital bidding interface on her tablet for registered phone bidders. It was a technical job, not a visible one, which meant she'd been moved out of the room's center and into its margins. Marcus had noticed this before the auction started, and had kept the observation to himself. The first 12 lots moved fast, mostly photography and smaller prints, nothing above 300,000, all of them clearing their estimates comfortably. The bidding was clean, and the crowd had the slightly elevated energy that comes when a room full of people accustomed to watching money move are actually watching money move. Laughter. Champagne. The sound of a room that believes everything is going exactly as planned. Lot 13 was a Kara Walker silhouette series that Marcus had always wanted and had lost at a Christie's sale in 2021. He watched it go to a phone bidder for $1.1 million and felt the particular small ache of something already past. Lots 14 through 22 continued without incident. Marcus watched. He ate nothing. He finished half a glass of water at some point. He was very good at waiting. It was at Lot 23 that Derek came back. He came with intent this time. Purposeful stride, no server in tow, and the particular expression of a man who has had 40 minutes to reframe something that bothered him and has arrived at a framing he finds satisfying. He positioned himself at Marcus's right shoulder, with the ease of a man accustomed to occupying space that belongs to someone else. "Quite a collection," Derek said, nodding at the wall. He meant it as a preamble. Marcus waited. "I want to apologize," Derek said, "for the confusion earlier. Sylvia mentioned, well, the documentation hadn't been fully communicated to the floor team and in a busy event." He paused. "You understand?" "I understand perfectly," Marcus said. Derek smiled, because he'd taken that as acceptance. It wasn't. Marcus let him take it. "Tell me," Derek said, pivoting to the tone of a man who has closed one chapter and is beginning another. "The Basquiat. You've had it, what, 5 years?" "6. Incredible piece. Where'd you pick it up?" "Sotheby's," Marcus said. "November 2019. Derek made an impressed sound, like this was information he hadn't already had access to if he'd looked. "I tried for that one," he said. "Lost the bid. Came in second by—" He made a closing gesture. "Margin." Marcus looked at him. "By 400,000. Derek blinked. "You were the other phone bid," Marcus said. "You came in at 1.7. I came in at 2.1. Callum ran the clock to 60 seconds. Derek's expression cycled through something complicated. You knew that?" "I researched the competitive landscape on every significant acquisition," Marcus said simply. "It's a small market." The silence between them had a different texture now. Derek was recalibrating faster than Sylvia had. He was sharper in that specific way, more practiced at rapid social adjustment. But the adjustment still had to happen, which meant the gap between who he'd thought Marcus was an hour ago and who Marcus was now had to be crossed in real time. And that crossing was visible if you knew how to look for it. "Marcus," Derek said, and used the name like a handshake, like a thing he could grip to stabilize the conversation. "I want to be direct with you." "All right." "The Basquiat is the anchor lot tonight. We're projecting it clears 4.5, maybe 4.8 given the room. The foundation benefits significantly, the gallery benefits significantly, and frankly," he paused, "I think you know what a clean, successful auction tonight means for the Hargrove's reputation in this market." "I do," Marcus said. "I'd like to know we're aligned," Derek said, "that there are no concerns on your end that might complicate the evening." Marcus looked at him for a moment. The auctioneer's voice rose behind them. Lot 27 had just cleared its estimate by 40%, and the room responded with a sound somewhere between applause and relief. "I have no concerns," Marcus said. "About the auction." Derek heard the thing that wasn't said. His jaw shifted slightly, a small movement, quickly controlled. "Good." He extended a hand. "Then we're in good shape." Marcus shook it. Derek's grip was firm in the practiced way of someone who has been told firm handshakes matter. He walked back toward Sylvia. Marcus turned to look at Lot 27, a large abstract oil, just sold, now being tagged by a staff member for collection. He watched the tag go on. He thought about what Derek had said. "I'd like to know we're aligned." The specific word, aligned, like an apology would complicate their alignment, like what had happened earlier was a variable in a business equation rather than an event that had meaning of its own. He took out his phone. He looked at standby. He looked at the room. Lot 32 came and went. Lot 35, one of his, the Lagos photograph, sold to a collector from Miami for $240,000, above estimate. Marcus felt a small, clean satisfaction at that. Nadia had described it well in the catalog. The Miami collector knew what they were buying. Lots 40 through 46 moved through in sequence. The room had the compressed energy of the final stretch. People who'd been saving themselves, financially and emotionally, for the centerpiece were now very still, very alert. The ambient conversation had dropped by half. Phones that had been holstered were appearing again, but not for social media, for bid apps, for confirmation calls, for the particular private arithmetic of people about to spend serious money. Lot 47 was announced at 9:48. Callum's voice lifted. The room focused. The lighting shifted slightly. Someone in the control booth had cued a subtle uplighting sequence that made the Basquiat's colors burn a little hotter from the far wall. It was a good effect. Marcus had noticed it in the technical plan and had approved it. The opening bid was set at $2.4 million. A hand went up immediately. A man 3 rows left, no hesitation, the body language of someone who'd decided his number before he walked in tonight. Another bid came from the phone. Nadia's channel, Marcus noted, watching her touch the screen on her tablet and relay the number to Callum in a quick, clean sequence. She was good at the technical side. Focused. 2.6, 2.9, 3.1. The room was very quiet now. The bids moved in 100,000 increments, and each one landed in the silence, like a stone in still water. 3.4, 3.6, 3.9. A third bidder entered. Someone near the back wall Marcus hadn't noticed before. A woman in a dark blazer with the settled attention of a person who does this regularly. 4.1 million. One hand dropped. The phone bid from Nadia's channel held. 4.2. 4.3. The woman in the dark blazer. 4.4. Phone bid. 4.5 million. Callum let the clock run. 20 seconds. 30. The woman in the dark blazer didn't move. The phone line stayed open through Nadia's tablet. 40 seconds. Then something happened that wasn't in any plan. Derek stood up from his seat at the center table. He raised his paddle. 4.7, he said, clearly, into the room's silence. A murmur moved through the space. Not at the number, but at Derek. Because Derek Crane was the gallery's largest donor. He wasn't supposed to be a bidder. The ethics of it were complicated, not illegal, but the kind of thing that created whispers. Sylvia's face, from her position near the stage, went through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds. The third one was the one she kept. The phone bid didn't respond. The woman in the dark blazer sat back slightly. 4.7. Callum let the clock run. 30 seconds. Marcus looked at the Basquiat from across the room. He thought about November 2019. He thought about the specific quiet of the Sotheby's room when the hammer came down. He thought about what the work had meant to him when he first saw it, before it was an asset, before it was a loan agreement, when it was just a piece of art that had made him stand very still in front of it for a long time. 4.7 million. Hammer approaching. Clock running. And then Callum's voice. Steady, neutral. The voice of a man who treats 8-figure transactions like weather reports, said the words that would define the rest of the evening. Sold at 4.7 million to... Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. One message, not from his team, from a number he recognized as the Hargrove Gallery's main office line. A message that should not have been possible from that line, because that line was administrative, not personal, and no one from the Hargrove had his direct number except the person who had handled the loan documentation 6 weeks ago. The message read, "Mr. Hale, I need to speak with you immediately. I think something is wrong." N.O.C. Marcus looked up from his phone. Nadia was across the room, tablet in hand, and she was looking directly at him. The hammer came down on lot 47. And Marcus felt, with the precision of a man who has been watching a thing approach for a long time, the exact moment when a decision that had been pending all evening stopped being pending. He found her in the service corridor behind the east wall, where the gallery's infrastructure, cable runs, lighting controls, a rolling rack of white-gloved handling equipment, lived out of sight of the event floor. Nadia was standing near the lighting panel with her tablet clutched to her chest, and she had the look of someone who had made a decision and was now on the other side of it. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was steady, the composure of someone holding something that might shatter. "What did you find?" Marcus said. Nadia turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was a document he recognized immediately. The loan agreement between the Hale Collection and the Hargrove Gallery, executed 6 weeks ago. His signature on page 12. Standard terms on pages 1 through 8. Page 9 was not standard. "It was filed as an administrative addendum," Nadia said. "I processed the original paperwork when I was hired, but I wasn't the one who filed the addendum. That came through 6 weeks later, after the original execution. I only found it tonight because I was cross-referencing the insurance documentation, and the file numbers didn't match." Marcus looked at page 9. The addendum transferred auction proceeds distribution in a way that was not in the original agreement. The standard split, 60% to the lending collector, 40% to the gallery for foundation expenses, had been altered. Under the addendum, 80% of Lot 47's proceeds would remain with the Hargrove Foundation's operating fund, with the remaining 20% dispersed to the lending collector. The lending collector. The Hale Collection. Marcus. At $4.7 million, that would mean Marcus received $940,000. Under the original agreement, he would have received $2.82 million. The difference was $1.88 million, routed to the gallery's operating fund, where, based on the fund's structure, a significant portion would flow to the Foundation's board discretionary accounts. Derek Crane chaired the Foundation's board. "When was this addendum filed?" Marcus asked. His voice hadn't changed. 8 weeks ago." Nadia looked at him carefully. 2 weeks before the loan agreement was executed. Marcus processed this. The addendum had been backdated. Filed before the original agreement, time-stamped after. A document designed to look like a supplementary clause that had simply been missed in the signing process. If Nadia hadn't been cross-referencing insurance files on the night of the auction itself, it likely would have been discovered only after proceeds were dispersed, by which point the path to recovery would have been long and expensive and uncertain. He looked at Nadia. She'd found this on her own, on a night when she could have been doing her job and nothing else. She'd noticed the inconsistency, traced it, pulled the files, understood what she was looking at, and then sent a message to a man she'd known for approximately 4 hours. "You know what this means," he said. Not a question. "Yes," she said. She meant the addendum, but also the other thing. The thing that happened to people who found documents like this and acted on what they found. "Are you sure you want to be the one who brought this to me?" Nadia's jaw set in that way it had when she'd stepped forward earlier. "I'm the one who found it," she said simply. "So yes." Marcus looked at the tablet for another 3 seconds. Long enough to be certain he'd seen everything he needed to see. Long enough to think about the specific shape of what came next. He straightened. "I need to make a call." He stepped 2 paces down the corridor and dialed. The call connected on the first ring. His attorney, a woman named Patricia Chen, who had been his primary legal counsel for 9 years and who operated on the principle that calls from Marcus Hale at 9:50 on a Thursday evening were calls she answered immediately. "I need you to freeze Lot 47's disbursement," Marcus said, "and I need you to pull the full transaction history on the Hargrove Foundation's operating fund. Specifically, any amendments or addenda filed in the last 90 days. And call the Hargroves board chair, not Derek Crane, the independent chair, tonight. I can have the freeze in place in 15 minutes, Patricia said. The board contact will take until morning. The freeze tonight. The rest tomorrow is fine. He ended the call, looked back at Nadia. You should document what you found, he said. Screenshots, file numbers, the timestamp discrepancy. Don't send it to anyone inside the gallery yet. Just secure it. Nadia was already doing it, moving through screens with the efficiency of someone who'd anticipated this instruction. I know what I found, she said, without looking up. I want to make sure it holds. It will. She looked up at that. You're very calm. I've been watching this room all night, Marcus said. I had a sense the evening wasn't going the way anyone was expecting. Including you? He considered this honestly. I knew the loan terms had been misrepresented, he said. I didn't know the mechanism. This, he nodded at the tablet. This is more specific than I was prepared for. But it doesn't change the outcome. A murmur of distant applause filtered through the wall. Lot 47's hammer had come down 15 minutes ago. The auction was moving through whatever remained of the catalog. On the other side of that wall, 200 people were watching numbers climb, believing the evening was a success. What happens now? Nadia asked. Now I walk back out there, Marcus said. He did. The room had the loosened energy of an event moving toward its close. The remaining lots were smaller, the bidding more relaxed, the crowd beginning to separate into the clusters of people who would stay for the post-auction reception, and those already plotting their exits. Marcus moved through it steadily, making his way toward the podium. Callum saw him coming. Something in Marcus's face or posture, the particular quality of a man moving with intention through a room full of people moving with none, made Callum lower his gavel and step slightly to the side. Marcus leaned in close. He said one sentence. Callum's expression went through three things quickly. The third was resignation. He pressed a button on the podium's audio panel, spoke one sentence into a headset, and set the gavel down with the careful precision of a man putting something fragile in a safe place. The screens behind the stage went dark. All of them. Simultaneously. In the middle of a bid count on Lot 48. The room noticed. The room went quiet. Marcus stepped back from the podium. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't raise his voice. He looked across the gallery, across the white tablecloths and the crystal and the 200 faces all turning toward the stage, toward the darkened screens, toward the specific blankness where certainty had been 30 seconds ago. And he found Sylvia. She was already moving toward him. She covered the distance in 10 seconds, heels precise on the gallery floor, 2 board members in her wake, and she arrived with her voice at a low controlled frequency that was the professional equivalent of a scream. What have you done? I've withdrawn consent for the disbursement of Lot 47's proceeds, Marcus said. Under Section 14 of the original loan agreement. The standard section, not the addendum. Something moved across Sylvia's face. There is no... The addendum is part of the signed documentation. The addendum was timestamped 2 weeks before the original agreement was executed, Marcus said. And the disbursement split it describes doesn't appear in any version of the document I signed. He paused. Patricia Chen has already contacted the New York Arts Foundation's compliance office. They'll have the filing discrepancy documentation by morning. Sylvia's face went still. The professional composure didn't break exactly. It was more like the room behind it emptied out, leaving just the surface. Derek arrived from the left. He'd clearly seen the screens go dark from his table, and had spent 30 seconds processing what it meant before walking over, and the processing had not been kind to his expression. "Sylvia, what's happening?" "Ask your foundation board chair," Marcus said to him. "The independent one." Derek's eyes shifted to Sylvia, then back to Marcus. Something in the architecture of his certainty, the thing that had let him raise a paddle for $4.7 million in a room he considered his, cracked along a seam that had apparently been there for a while. "You can't just—" He stopped, started again. The hammer came down. The sale is subject to the disbursement terms the owner agreed to," Marcus said. "Which are the terms in the document I signed, not the document that was inserted into the file afterward." The room was very quiet now, not the polished quiet of an auction, the raw quiet of 200 people who have understood that something significant is happening and are deciding whether to look. Marcus let the silence hold for 4 seconds. He looked at Derek, then at Sylvia. "I came here tonight," he said quietly, "because I wanted to believe that this institution was what it presents itself as. A place that values the work, values the artists, values the people who make the work possible." Neither of them spoke. "You treated me tonight the way you treat everyone you can't immediately categorize as worth your attention," Marcus said. "That's a habit. I understand habits. What you did to the loan documentation?" He paused. "That's a different category of thing." Sylvia's voice was very careful. "Marcus, if there has been an error in the filing, a clerical issue, that can be corrected through— It can be corrected through the compliance process that's already started," Marcus said. "My attorneys will be in contact with the board in the morning. Tonight, Lot 47 stays on hold." He turned. From across the room, he saw Nadia standing near the entrance. She had her tablet. She'd documented everything. She gave him no signal, just stood there with the stillness of someone who had done what they believed was right, and was now waiting to learn what that cost. Marcus crossed the room. The crowd parted, not from ceremony, just from physics, people stepping back from the path of something moving with purpose. He stopped beside her. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once. "I would have wanted someone to tell me," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "You should send those screenshots to your personal email, just in case." "Already sent." He almost smiled. "Good." He walked to the gallery's main exit. The cold air of West 57th met him at the door, clean and sharp after 3 hours inside. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his grandfather's watch catching the streetlight, and he looked back through the glass at the gallery interior, at the screens still dark, at the crowd still processing, at Sylvia and Derek in conference with 3 board members, their faces moving through the stages of a conversation that was going to last a long time. He took out his phone, sent one message to Patricia. "Confirm freeze is in place." The reply came in 40 seconds. "Confirmed. Legal will be with board chair at 9 a.m. He locked the screen. A cab appeared at the corner. Marcus raised his hand. Behind him, through the glass, the Hargrove Gallery's most successful event in 3 years continued to unravel with the particular slow certainty of something that had been constructed on a foundation that wasn't what it claimed to be. He got in the cab, gave his address, said nothing else. The city moved past the windows, indifferent and bright. The Hargrove story broke on Friday morning, which meant it broke in 3 waves. The first wave was Art Press, a brief on the ArtNet newswire at 7:42 a.m. citing significant irregularities in auction documentation at the previous evening's charity event. Careful language, no names, The kind of phrasing that tells people who know the industry exactly what to read between the lines. The second wave was the clip. Someone at the event, Marcus didn't know who, hadn't tried to find out, had been recording on their phone during the altercation near Lot 23, when Derek had approached him with the server in tow, and again near the podium when the screens went dark. The clip was 93 seconds long. It showed Derek's body language during the earlier exchange. The look, the way he'd gestured toward the service corridor without using words, the particular contempt that is most legible when a person doesn't know they're being recorded. It showed Marcus's stillness, and it showed, in the clip's final 20 seconds, Derek's face when the screens went dark. The progression from confusion to understanding to something that couldn't be described except by the word caught. The caption, when the clip circulated, read, "Man assumed to be staff at Hargrove Gala owns collection that anchored the auction. Asked to use the service corridor. Gallery chair's bid just froze. By 9 a.m., it had been shared 4,000 times. By noon, 11,000. The third wave came slower and hit harder. 3 separate art collectors issued public statements saying they were reviewing their loan agreements with the Hargrove pending the compliance investigation. One was a museum in Philadelphia. One was a private foundation in Houston. The third was a Japanese collector who had works on loan to the Hargrove worth, collectively, $6.3 million. Marcus didn't watch any of this in real time. He was at his kitchen table at 7:30 a.m., coffee in hand, reviewing Patricia Chen's overnight summary of the compliance documentation Nadia had forwarded from her personal email. The timestamp discrepancy was clean and unambiguous. The addendum had been inserted into the file system 2 weeks before the original loan agreement was executed. A file creation date that someone had apparently not thought to correct. The alteration to the disbursement split was documented in Patricia's summary in 2 columns. What Marcus had signed and what the addendum claimed he had signed. He read through it twice. Then he set the summary down and drank his coffee. At 9:15, Patricia called. Board chair made contact at 9:03, she said. Sylvia Crane has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Derek Crane has resigned from the foundation board, effective immediate. The gallery's independent auditors have been authorized to review all loan documentation from the past 36 months. Marcus set his cup down. How many agreements? They've flagged 42 for initial review, Patricia said. Not all of them will show alterations. But based on what we found in yours, she paused. This wasn't the first time. Marcus had suspected this. He said nothing for a moment. The gallery's going to survive? He asked. The institution? Probably. Patricia's voice was measured. It depends on what the audit finds in the other 41 agreements. The board is committed to making affected parties whole. There's enough in the operating fund, it turns out, to do that. Another pause. Because the operational fund is quite large. Yes, Marcus said. It is. Your disbursement will be corrected to the original terms, Patricia continued. $2.82 million, once the hold is cleared. I'm expecting that by end of next week. Thank you, Patricia. He ended the call, sat with his coffee. Outside the window, the street was ordinary. A delivery truck double-parked. A woman walking a dog with the distracted patience of someone who has done this exact walk 1,000 times. A man unlocking a hardware store 2 buildings down. He stayed at the table for a while. He was thinking about something Nadia had said in the service corridor. I would have wanted someone to tell me. He turned that over. It was a simple sentence. It was the entire moral logic of what she'd done, compressed to 8 words. She didn't help him because of what he owned, or what he could do, or what correcting the situation would mean for her. She helped him because it was the right thing to do, and she was the person who happened to be standing there. He thought about that for a long time. At 10 a.m. he sent an email. It went to the Hargrove's board chair, and it was brief. He had a proposal for the institution's recovery process that he'd like to present in person. Not as a donor, as someone with a specific interest in what the gallery became once the dust settled. The board chair responded in 14 minutes. We would welcome that conversation. 3 weeks later, the Hargrove announced two things simultaneously. The first was the conclusion of its internal audit, which had identified 11 loan agreements altered through the same addendum mechanism. All 11 affected collectors had been contacted. 9 had accepted the gallery's offer of full corrected disbursement plus interest. 2 were in ongoing legal negotiation. Derek Crane was separately under investigation by the New York Attorney General's office. Sylvia Crane had resigned permanently. The second announcement concerned the gallery's new interim curatorial director, effective immediately, appointed by a unanimous board vote, Nadia Osei. She was 24 years old and had been employed at the Hargrove for 8 months and 2 weeks. The announcement noted her exceptional commitment to documentation standards and her demonstrated integrity under pressure. It said nothing about a service corridor on a Thursday evening, or a cross-reference discrepancy in an insurance file, or a text message sent to a man she'd known for 4 hours. Marcus read the announcement on a Tuesday afternoon in his office, where Lot 47, the Basquiat, was back on his wall. Not loaned out, not on the market. Just home, where he could look at it when he was thinking about something difficult. He read the announcement twice. Then he set his phone down and looked at the painting for a while. He thought about the room 3 weeks ago, the amber uplighting, the quartet playing Ravel that no one listened to, the moment when the screens went dark and 200 faces turned toward a silence they hadn't expected. He thought about Derek's hand on a champagne paddle. He thought about a doorman reconsidering his posture, and a server redirected against his will, and a smile that asked him to use the service corridor. He thought about how none of it had changed what he owned, how none of it had changed what he knew, how the only thing that mattered, the only thing that had ever mattered in rooms like that, was whether the person standing next to the column had the patience to let the evening reveal itself at its own speed. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number that resolved, when he looked, to one he recognized, the Hargrove's main administrative line, the same line Nadia had used 3 weeks ago. The message read, "First day. Lot 12 sold this morning to a collector in São Paulo. Above estimate. Thought you should know." N. Marcus looked at the message for a moment. Then he typed back, "She described it well." He set the phone down. Outside his window, the city ran its ordinary Tuesday business. Deliveries and arguments, and 1,000 private transactions between people who didn't know each other, each one carrying its own invisible weight of who was owed what, and by whom, and why. Marcus watched it for a while from the window, the quiet particular to someone who has nothing left to wait for in a room they've already understood. His grandfather's watch read 11:47. He turned back to the Basquiat. He had work to do. I keep thinking about Nadia in that service corridor, the way she stood there with her tablet, and said I would have wanted someone to tell me, like it was the simplest thing, like there was no other way to answer the question of what you do when you find something like that. She wasn't protected. She wasn't powerful. She'd been at that gallery for 8 months. She knew exactly what she was walking into when she sent that message. What I keep wondering is, how many people in that room saw something off earlier in the evening and decided it wasn't their problem? Not out of malice. Just out of that very human math we all do. What's the cost of this? Who am I in this situation? Is this really mine to carry? Nadia did the math differently. If this one stayed with you, if you found yourself at a different place in Nadia's moment than you expected, I'd really like to hear what you made of that. Drop it in the comments. I read them.